Welcome back to Book Club Preview. I'm Michael, and today we're looking at what if and checking out two questions. One, no more DNA. What if suddenly all the DNA in our body just vanished? And number two, an interplanetary Cessna. And it says, what if we took a normal Earth plane, Cessna, and flew it on other bodies in the solar system? What would happen? And we look at those questions. The first one, DNA. Well, the first thing that would happen is if your DNA disappeared, you'd be about 1/3 of a pound lighter. You could do that by going to the bathroom, by giving a little blood, by even traveling to different places on the Earth. But the DNA would disappear, and you'd be a little lighter, which could cause a little shake as your muscles are keeping their balance right now. And if that weight disappeared, the muscles would not know how much power to send to keep that weight. If we look at some different effects of what it might look like, there's several different examples that we can see. The first one is the destroying angel, which is a kind of mushroom, which is really freaky. If you eat it, you'll get really sick, you'll throw up, your stomach will hurt, and you'll have diarrhea. But then you'll start to feel better. Oh, I feel better. But actually what is happening inside is the mushroom is like binding to your cells and not letting them reproduce, or blocking the DNA or something. And so then eventually your body just starts to die. Wow. So that would be a little bit similar to what would happen. We can also compare this to like radiation and chemotherapy. When you take chemotherapy, it stops your cells from splitting, which is cancer is splitting, which causes the problem. But chemotherapy stops it from splitting, and that would be a little bit of like if you had no DNA, your cells couldn't split. And the biggest problem with that would be our bones. Our bones are always creating immunity cells to protect our bodies. And so if we didn't have chemotherapy, or if we had chemotherapy, that would stop and we'd get sick because we wouldn't have anything to defend our body with. And that might be similar to what would happen if we didn't have DNA. Radiation does a similar thing. Radiation, it targets the cells that are also splitting, and if we didn't have DNA, then it would be kind of like a radiation poisoning, to where our bones again and our immune system would not work very well, and eventually we would die. The good news is that if we didn't have any DNA and people were trying to track us through DNA tracking, we would be invisible. And then we'd probably die in a few hours. Okay, question 2. What about a Cessna traveling to other planets or different bodies? And if we look at this, the most common plane is a Cessna 172 Skyhawk. Feel free to Google that image. And what's really going to happen in most cases is we're going to crash. Okay, there's no air, there's too much gravity, there's too much heat, things like that. You're just going to crash the plane. But there are a few bodies that actually have atmosphere. The first one is the sun. If you got close enough to the sun to actually get into the atmosphere, you'd be burned up. The second one is Mars. Mars has an atmosphere and it has a gravity, but in order to actually be able to lift off, because the air is so thin, you would have to be going at Mach 1. But then when you turned, you don't have enough weight to actually move in the direction you want to go. So you'd actually continue being pushed in one direction. So it'd give like a supersonic airliner or ocean liner, like a cruise liner. Like they just turn so slow. And that's what it'd be like flying on Mars. Venus actually has some clouds. If you're close to the surface on Venus, it's too hot and you'll just burn up. But if you get above the clouds, you could actually fly in a kind of like Earth. But the air is filled with sulfuric acid, so you could probably melt in the sulfuric acid. Jupiter. Jupiter has so much gravity that if you're flying, it would just suck you in. And there's no ground on Jupiter, so you just go from gas into liquid. Ugh, creepy. Saturn is kind of similar. You would just crash, but a little slower crash. Uranus might be okay as far as the gas giants go, but it's so boring you wouldn't really see anything. You'd just be flying around doing nothing until you crashed. Neptune would work better also, but it's freezing cold, so even if you're flying, your plane would freeze up and you'd crash. Now, the best example or the best case situation might be Titan, which is one of the moons on Saturn, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. But this moon actually has atmosphere, oxygen, and low gravity. So even using our own muscles, if we had like some wings or something, we could probably fly on Titan. The problem with Titan is it's very, 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 very cold, and you would turn into an ice cube and die. That leaves us with some vocabulary. Centrifugal. Centrifugal is when something is spinning and you get thrown off. So this centrifugal force around the equator is actually pushing you away from the center, and you would be a third of a pound lighter. Precise means very detailed, very exact. Innocuous means harmless. When you ate the mushroom, you would feel sick, but then you'd be like, oh, I feel better. I feel fine. Blech. You would think it was harmless, and then you'd die. Enzyme is a protein chemical that causes a chemical reaction in your body. Accumulate is to gather or build up. Aeronautics is kind of the science or study of excuse me again, of flying in the air. That leaves us with our discussion question. Which place would you like to fly if you could fly safely at the Sun, Venus, Mars, Neptune, Saturn, all those different options? Which is the place you would like to go fly in the most? And of course, please make your own discussion question. That is all the time that we have for today. But thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Book Club Preview. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.